I came out on this road trip to, see how we're, as a team, spiritually, physically, since this time, of course, Lance and obviously Aaron have had some physical problems and are going to miss some games. But, I like the attitude the team came out of on, I think it was Friday and Saturday of last week, Boston and Detroit. So I wanted to see if we could kind of gain some momentum in this season and start doing some things that gave us some promise of this next year. Phoenix was an unusual game for us, scoring a lot of points, but it was played at a level that I like to see. Denver was not a good game. We're unhappy about that, but they look lethargic. So, we move forward and see what it's going to be like this weekend here in L.A.
Phil, with Kurt, what have you seen as his stint has gone on? I mean, are you happy with how he's handling things, and are there any regrets of making this move?
Well, let me see. There are about 3 questions or 4 in that question. Let me start with Kurt. Kurt and I have a relationship that goes back to 2001 when I took the job in '99. He was the interim coach here with the Lakers and had a relatively good season, which I described as the asterisk season. 52 games that year, something like that, and I thought he did a good job coaching. Not in the playoffs because the team got swept, but things happened in that time. So being announced as a coach and Kurt, having had the interim coaching job, I asked him to do another service for the team, which was to be an NBA scout, and we'd see how it would go after that as an assistant coach. I felt it was a little too close and a little too maybe uncomfortable for him to be on the staff. So the following year, in 2000, 2001, he became an assistant coach and was with me except for the sabbatical year that I took, with me the duration of my time here until he got a coaching job of his own. So, he knows the ins and outs, what pleases me probably, and what, I want to have changed. All that being said, we have a relationship where, he'll call up and say, well, what do you think about that game? Or what do you think about the substitution pattern? Or I'll say, hey, what happened at the end of the Boston game? I need to know. So, we have a relationship that's, much more tight. And having tried to create autonomy for Derek, kind of separated me a little bit from the direct contact. And Steve Mills was, closer contact for Derek than I was because of our relationship in the past. And also the guys, you guys kind of wanted to harp in on the fact that he was a puppet, perhaps. And I wanted him to have the autonomy to make decisions on his own and not feel like I was an overload. With Kurt, we're trying to get ourselves going in this season with young players that have to have an opportunity to play now in this season that, we're losing the possibility of a playoff. So, we have to see growth for next year.
Would your preference be, Phil, on the first day of training camp next year for Kurt to be the coach of the team?
I have to see if this team moves or doesn't move behind, what goes on this season. I think that he's, perfectly capable of doing that. We've talked many times over the past 4 or 5 years about the obvious record that is created behind his coaching in Minnesota, and that puts a black mark on his coaching ability at first sight, at first glance. But he's got a way of handling players. He's relaxed, but yet he has the ability to keep them focused on the important parts of it. He's a defensive-oriented guy. I had him as a defensive coordinator for my teams in 7, 8, and 9, and I think he's got a real good handle on that part. So we'll see how they go this year.
How do you judge of what you've seen so far from Kurt on the bench and how the team has reacted thus far?
We've been inconsistent. I think there have been times we've been lethargic. I've noticed players that are not, giving what I would call a full benefit of their efforts at times. And I think some of it's due to, the depression about not being a playoff-bound team that might be weighing on them. And I've tried to step in their room about a week and a half ago and talk to them about some of the things I felt had to change. So I think there's a little different attitude about these players now, and I hope it's right. I'm right about that.
So for you, it's less, the results matter, but you also want to see if there's some progress and development, and if things are going in the right direction when it comes to evaluating Kurt's performance.
Yeah, we have a group of young men that are, starters that, starting with Langston and Lance, who were, last year was their first year with us, and Lou is obviously a longtime veteran, but and Jaron and Kristaps. Clay Anthony, who's had just an outrageous year to, hard to measure his growth, but those are some of the young players that we have to build with and build upon for the future. So we need to see that. And then the players that we got in free agency, not counting Sasha, but, Kyle, Kevin, Aaron, etc. They're important to see how they're blending in with what we're doing. And, Derek Williams is one I didn't mention that, we're very interested in how they're going to play. They have opt-outs at the end of the year, and so they're not a given, Aaron and Derek, for the next season. They're still, free agents at the end of this year with their options. So, we want to see, are they going to blend in or are they going to be part of this?
Carmelo's been frustrated, obviously. It's going to be potentially 3 years in a row that you don't make the playoffs. Have you had any conversations with him about the direction of the franchise, and do you feel like he's still, a cornerstone for you guys?
Yes. Yes. And yes on all three of those. We had a conversation. We had some time on this trip to talk. We went through all the things. Disappointment. He sees the potential that we have. He has questions about where we're going, and so we discussed it. But I've told him, the details I won't discuss. I think that has to be between us.
Does he seem happy with after the talk? I mean, did you feel it was a productive talk where because remember you said in London you had talked to him,
Yeah.
and he had calmed some of his.
You guys know Mel. I mean, he's sometimes you have to solicit things out of Carmelo, and in my conversation I didn't. He came out and asked questions, which I always think engagement is important, and he was engaged, and that's important.
In a big picture sense, the record is what it is, but do you feel like you are where you want to be at this point in your tenure as president, when you look at, the full 5 years that you're scheduled to be here?
In January when we were 22-22, we knew our schedule was going to get tough, and we knew we were going to play a lot of games, and we're going to play some tougher opponents. At that time, I think there was really a playoff hopes, and I had to calm down, some people that were, in that degree, and say, look at, we won 17 games last year. We have 5 more wins at this particular time. But teams don't come back from 17 wins to win 41 in this league. That's just not the way it is. And I think 41 is probably going to be the number that'll, make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. So, we have to be realistic about what we're doing. And, Derek and I talked about this. And, when I made the change in the coaching, I gave Kurt a directive that it's important that we keep pushing on for the playoffs, but that hasn't happened. We couldn't turn it around, and I think a lot of it had to do with fatigue. I think we played players that, hadn't had that kind of playing time in the young players. And in some of the other players, we pushed them a lot of minutes, Aaron, Carmelo, etc. And I think the fatigue. And then, Melo went down with a freak injury of the ankle, and subsequently, things kind of fell off. But we still want to win. We still want to win ball games for two reasons. One, we want to have some momentum, and two, we don't want Toronto to have a good lottery pick. Simply that way, right? They're in our conference, and they're in the first place in our conference, or in the division.
Back in the, when you spoke to us last, talking about the trade deadline, you said, Kristaps, obviously, we know we're not going to move him, and you said Melo, everyone knows he's got no trade clause. When you talked about Melo, some people interpret it as, he didn't talk about Melo in such glowing terms. Do you see him as like untouchable in the trade market at this point?
That's entirely up to Carmelo. He has it in his contract. It's part of our agreement with him. Is if you want to leave, you have the decision to leave. We don't have that. That's the contract that we negotiated with him. So it's in his lap. But we like a lot of what he played at this year. We liked a lot of stuff. Now, I think he got disappointed at some point. And, things happen. But I'm seeing the ball move better a lot of times. Not as many holds, not as long a hold at times. And I think it depends a lot about the degree of where the game's at. And sometimes he feels like I have to take this game over because now we're starting to fall behind by double digits, et cetera. So I'm trying to say, keep with the program. We can come back. And we had a game in Indiana where, he had to go out. Our bench came out, and come back in the ball game and take the lead. So there's hope there, and he has to see that.
Phil, when you look at, I think Kurt made a comment to us the other day that, despite the fact that playoffs look like they're probably beyond capability right now, that in a lot of situations with the rebuilding parts of the roster, you figure you'd see Jaren more and that you'd see some of those guys more. And Kurt said, I'm not quite at that point. If management tells me, then obviously I'll play those guys more. Where are you with that sort of thing based on where you guys are at?
Well, Kurt is open to whatever suggestions we have, which is good. But he also wants to win ball games. I mean, these guys are competitive. Our mood changes from game to game depending upon how we play. And that's all part of being a competitive, NBA player. Whether inserting, Jaren in the lineup for playing 25 to 30 minutes or, start to play, Chris more minutes in the course of the year, that's still not something we've said, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. We have talked about, other players, Seraphin getting some opportunities to look and see, how Kevin's going to fit together. Derek playing a role now that Lance is out and being more minute guy, et cetera. And we're encouraging him to feel, comfortable sometimes taking Carmelo off the floor so he's not playing 40-minute games. Right. There's not a whole lot to gain from that, and, a win may be there, but, that's ultimately we need to, get that back in scope and find a rotation. Now, what I felt that Kurt did that was important is he found a rotation that he liked. And I felt Derek never really got to a solid rotation during the course of the year. He couldn't quite find guys that could produce except Lance and Langston off the bench. And, I think that kind of kept an uneven feel about how the team went and directed.
Is there you kind of hinted at it where you say he's capable of it, but is there an odd dynamic there where on the one hand, Kurt by no means to us has said, I'm gunning for this job, but when you're in an interim role, the idea of still trying to win, but also, like you said, with the idea that some of the players on this roster are developing and Carmelo playing a certain amount of minutes, is it a tough dynamic when you obviously would like to be able to push for the job, but you don't want to burn certain guys out by trying to do that?
No, he knows, we acknowledge that's part of what's going to drive him, and it should. The other part is, what's best for the team, and, so the best thing about it is that he's compliant and willing to ask questions and put himself in that position.
With your conversation with Carmelo, are you confident? You said it's in his hands. Are you confident he wants to be that player going forward here?
Yeah. There's never been any other discussion. I think last year I asked him, are you happy in New York? Do you consider this, home, in that regard? And he said, yeah, I do. So, that was the extent of the conversation we've ever had.
With the Lakers coming up on Sunday, when you look back at your time with Kobe, how do you think that relationship evolved over the years?
It evolved from being kind of a coach is trying to get direction and trying to make a young man conform into a position that we wanted him to play. He was off guard. He was a playmaker of a basketball team. He had to develop in a way in which he incorporated his teammates. And there were times where the resistance of Kobe trying to take over a ball game or trying to do the things he likes to do would interfere with the business of what basketball was going on the floor. So there was a little contention that was going on during that period of time, and we managed to win 3 championships and go to a 4th. When I went away for a sabbatical and came back, there was this indication that perhaps this wouldn't work. But immediately, I went to Kobe and said, okay, what's going to go on here if I come back to this team? And he said, no, I don't have any problem. And we developed a much closer relationship. He went through a period of time where he asked Dr. Buss for a trade, et cetera. He had to get behind how we're going to make this work. How are you going to come back to the team? We're going to make progress. We're going to find players to play with that are quality players, so that you don't spend your time just trying to make the playoffs, but trying to win a championship. And we did that. And I thought, in the process, giving him various books, the Tao of Leadership and all these kind of, esoteric books to help him work out, some of the things about coming out of himself. One of my first, one-on-one meetings with him as a player and going through film with him as a player and talking to him about now your responsibility is to get the team organized and format our offense and get the ball inside the shack and whatever. And do you want to be a leader on this team? And he was like, of course I should be a captain. Well, he's 22 years of age at that time, maybe 21 even. And I said, well, how do you relate to your teammates? I don't go out with them. I don't do anything with them. They're all interested in girls and cars and rap and whatever else. So he said, well, that's not going to work out very well then. But he learned how to be a leader.
Given the way the things ended with you with the Lakers the first time around and all the attention with the book, were there any things that you had to do to kind of mend fences with him the second time?
We just talked about, let's keep this relationship between ourselves. So, that was our goal, and I developed a relationship with him that was a little more intimate, I would say. But some of it was just simply pulling into the parking lot and Kobe, taking a nap in the car next to me. And it would be 8:30 in the morning. I'd be going to film study. He'd be coming out of his first workout, which started at 6 in the morning, and then he'd take a nap between that and the team workout. And I just had to respect the dedication that he played basketball with and the desire that he had. And so, those moments, I think, brought us together when, I'd see him over there and then we'd meet and have breakfast before even anybody else came in.
This farewell tour, a bit of a surprise to see the fact that he has nothing really to play for, and he's sort of going out not as this fierce competitor, but sort of as this happy sage.
Yeah, one of the things I told him, I never wanted to see you or have to coach you when you were at this stage of going out, because it can be such a difficult time, not being able to play up at the level that you want to and not having a team that's competitive. But he's done it gracefully, and I think he's been appreciated by the fans. And Kobe's always one that's thrived on, a vitriolic fan relationship where, he's maybe the guy that comes in town and everybody boos. But he's turned that around this year, and it's nice to see.
What about free agency? You don't have max cap space, but what's your goal in free agency? Are you confident about free agency that you guys can have success? What's your views going in?
Yeah, very much so. I think that, everybody's going to be flush with money. It's going to be, a seller's market this year or whatever. We have definitely ideas about how to help this team. I don't think they're secrets or mysteries. We have agents calling us up all the time, trying to sell their players to us. So I think we're going to do just fine in the free agency. how we go about it, and what's our market going to be like, and whether we can provide enough money to do more than one free agent in this process. I think we'd like to have more than one ball player, obviously, and we'd like to keep some of our guys that are going to be free agents. So.
Well, you've had nothing but success as a coach. Has this experience been tougher for you, or I don't know, humbling, something like that? Because it looks like it could be another year without the playoffs, and not rebuild, but you're going to have to make some moves again this summer.
You know what I wanted to accomplish, I think we got accomplished this last year. The fact that we had a competitive team, I was telling our group of guys at some point, even in January, that I feel like every game we have a chance to win. That changed. I felt like that was a part of it that I didn't like to see. But we had a pretty good run for 3 months, and our phenom, our kid that has surprised everybody, hit the wall, and it's been tough for him in the process. So we see the holes that this team has. We see that some of the things that we wanted to get accomplished got accomplished. We like the fact that we have an interior presence. We have some things about our defense that is good. And so, that part feels good. But, coming to an end April, 12th, our final game, I'd never been in these positions before. It's like going on spring break, and I don't have any place to go. I mean, there's no place. Even the NBA market doesn't start opening until May, so it's hard things. So we'll do a lot of assessment. And we'll get all the statisticians to do all grind their work out so that we can look at forms and analysis over the next month before we start running in the free agent market.
Bill, I guess you could say it this way, you never really needed a star point guard with some of the teams you had. You had great wing players, you had Kobe and Shaq. Some people say that, this is an offense that doesn't really need that. How do you feel about that with the dynamic that there's in today's NBA, with that being maybe the deepest position and kind of the way you guys have played at that position this year? Going into free agency?
Well, when I broke into coaching in the NBA, maybe I should go back to when I broke in as a player. Everybody had basically a two-guard front. We went into, in our preseason, we went into upstate New York, and we went into Calvin Murphy territory. And Willis Reed was asked a question. We did a benefit at a high school. I think we played like 18 preseason games at that time. But I think we were somewhere like Utica or somewhere up there. We went to a high school, which was, we're still promoting the NBA game at that time to kids and youngsters. And one of the kids said, well, is there a chance that a 6-foot player can play in the NBA? And Willis's answer was slim and none, We didn't see that happening. Our small guards were 6'2" or 6'3" at that time. Right. And everybody was going bigger and bigger, and DeBusschere was a guard, and Oscar Robertson was guards, and all these guys at 6'6" and 6'7" were guards, and they were paired in pairs. It wasn't a point guard mentality. So there's an evolution in the game, and point guards came, and when I became the coach of the Bulls, we had some outstanding guards in our conference, and Mark Price, Isaiah Thomas. There were other guards that I could name, but those two stood out as the all-stars from the East. At that particular time, I think Henderson was at Boston, and so forth and so on. And we couldn't match. And my predecessor, Doug Collins, was, we brought in a number of guards, point guards. Sam Vincent and Steve Holter, Kyle from Kentucky, Macy, etc. Paxson, Hodges, and we ended up drafting B.J. Armstrong. So there was this whole point guard mentality, and we could never match the point guard. So we went to a two-guard format. And I think we were successful at it, and I think we caught a lot of people in the league by surprise because of the way we played. So it works, and we know it works, and there's been success, and it's been numbers of places. So my idea of chasing a point guard where it becomes just an obsession isn't necessary. It's not necessary. We can play the game without that, but we still need to have good performers. It doesn't matter. We really do. I had every anticipation Jose could be a kind of a guard that was going to be able to shoot, be an off guard, perhaps in a lot of roles, set up the team as he could do. And, I admire Jose's game. A lot of times I think that he sublimates his game for other people. And I've encouraged him to be much more dynamic. But, here he is. He's 34, if I'm not right. And, he knows he's ending, the latter part of his career. So, we have some young guards that we brought in, and we're looking to them to make a step forward. In that process, we've, as you guys know, we're anticipating, something with a Tony Roten, which I think came out this week, and he's a big point guard, a tall kid that can do things. We know that he needs a lot of medical attention, and he's probably not going to be able to play, but he's going to be a summer league performer, similar to what we did with Ricky Lito last year, and give this young man an opportunity to recover from, So our process is going on. It's a little underground or, a little beneath the surface. But, this is one of our, desires, that we have to have a penetrator. We have to have somebody that can handle those roles.
Phil, with Kobe, when you're referencing the trade demands he made in 2007, how close did you sense that possibly being in the reality of him getting traded?
Dr. Buss met with him twice. In our conversations, he said, I've actually given Kobe an opportunity to go out and find something that would work, that we could listen to. So there were some offers. And Dr. Buss listened to it, and he said, I used this before. If I had a 5-carat ring, 5-carat diamond, and someone offered to give me 4 1-carat diamonds for the diamond, does that seem possible that it's an equal swap? And, that was his reaching point. That was his selling point in this. So he understood, the dynamic drive that Kobe had, and they really wanted to get back in the championship hunt. So they made a real effort. We had been pushing on him, and the effort, paid off with Powell. And he came and changed the landscape for our team.
Facing for the last time, Phil, on Sunday, Carmelo saying how emotional it would be for him playing against him.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically on Sunday, how would it be for you, emotionally, for you seeing him for the last time, facing on Sunday?
Over the past 3-4 years, Kobe and I meet a lot. Maybe once every 3-4 months, just catch up. So we've stayed in contact. The actual presence on the court, whether he plays or not, I know he doesn't play every game now, is different, watching him play. And it'll be interesting, and it'll be fun to be here. And, I'm anticipating his final game and think it's going to be something really great for him.
What about the future for you, Phil? You dropped some hints about the 5-year contract. Maybe you don't do the whole 5 years. I mean, Jeannie, though, did say, you're going to be here for a while. I mean, there's a lot of speculation. Could you just address, do you feel you'll be here for the full 5 years? Or?
Well, I'm in LA right now. I'm enjoying it. I went out and rode my bike yesterday and did some things that were really nice to do. But this is another part of my life. The energy that I have is directed towards turning this team around. And that's taken my full effort. And so far it's been a challenge. So I'm still in it. And I'm in it to win it, so to speak. All right?
Did you go to Senior G's?
Yes, I did. Thank you, guys.